flexor carpi radialis, you're going to take your wrist up and towards your thumb. So that's the concentric. The eccentric, I need to push her into extension and ulnar deviation. So you're going to keep pulling up and towards your thumb, and I'm going to push you down and towards your pinky. Make sure you resist at the palm and not at the fingers. Because if you resist at the fingers, now I have my long finger flexors, and that's not wrist, that's fingers. Okay, so make sure you resist at the hand so that you're resisting wrist motion and not finger motion. Okay, so she's going to pull up and towards your thumb for the flexor carpi radialis, and for the eccentric, you keep pushing up, and I'm going to push down and towards her pinky. Okay, palmaris longus is straight up. Just flex your wrist straight up. You're going to hold up while I push down. And then flexor carpi ulnaris, you're going to pull up and towards your pinky, and I'm going to push down and towards your thumb for the eccentric. Okay? So you just have to differentiate the radial and ulnar deviation for the radialis and the ulnaris. Palmaris longus is straight wrist flexion. Okay? Extensors. Extensor carpi radialis longus starts at the lateral supracondylar ridge. The other two start at the lateral epicondyle. Okay? They are all radial nerve. They are all C6, C7 with the ulnaris having a C8 added in there. And all you got to remember is their order, because they all are bases of the metacarpals. One's the second, one's the third, one's the fifth. So the longus is the second, the brevis is the third, the ulnaris is the fifth. Pretty straight up, right? The more lateral one is a wrist extensor radial deviator. The middle one is just the wrist extensor. The more medial one is a wrist extensor ulnar deviator, just like the flexors. So from a palpation standpoint, absolutely, extensor carpi radialis longus, make sure you palpate supracondylar ridge. And then coming across the lateral epicondyle where the other two originate, and then they come across pretty much, the ulnaris kind of holds its own. You can almost palpate it all the way down. If you see like a little edge there, that's your ulnaris coming down there. So its little muscle bulk is pretty easy to find. The longus and brevis kind of get up with the long finger extensors into this main group muscle belly, and then they differentiate right at the wrist. Now when you extend your wrist, keep in mind you're not up in here. This is your extensor digitorum. These are your finger extensors, not your wrist extensors. So because of that extensor retinaculum that he talked about on the video that holds these tendons in place, the extensor tendons aren't quite as pronounced as the flexor tendons, so you gotta feel for them. But the longus is right there, going to the second metacarpal. The brevis is right there, going to the third metacarpal. And then the ulnaris is usually the easy one, because you can follow it pretty much along the edge of the ulna to the base of the fifth. Okay, so extensor carpi radialis longus, supracondylar ridge of the humerus down to the base of the second metacarpal. The extensor carpi radialis brevis is lateral epicondyle to the base of the third metacarpal, and extensor carpi ulnaris lateral epicondyle to base of the fifth metacarpal. All radial nerve, C6, C7, C6, C7, C6, C7, C8. Action-wise, concentric, eccentric, extensor carpi radialis longus is an extender radial deviator going towards the thumb. Keep in mind your location here, because when I talk about extension, I don't necessarily keep them in anatomical position, have them do this. Have them do this, okay? So concentrically for extensor carpi radialis longus, you're going to pull your wrist up and towards your thumb. Eccentrically, I'm going to push her down and towards her pinky. Extensor carpi radialis brevis is the middle one to the third metacarpal. You're just going to pull your wrist straight up. Hold that, and then you're going to keep holding up as I push down for the eccentrics. And then extensor carpi ulnaris, you're going to pull up and towards your pinky. And I'm going to push down and towards your thumb. Again, resisting at the hand and not at the fingers. Okay? Questions on those? Now, when we talked about, remember we talked about neutralizers, like the triceps with the bicep function? Mm-hmm. Extensor carpi radialis longus and flexor carpi radialis neutralize each other to cancel out their flexion and extension component to create pure radial deviation. So if you just put your hand flat like this and you go like this, that motion is produced by your flexor carpi radialis and your extensor carpi radialis longus, because they neutralize out their flexion and extension piece to just produce pure radial deviation.
It's the same thing as the biceps, triceps, just for... Okay.
So same thing is true on the ulnar side. So if I just do straight ulnar deviation, what two muscles produce that?
Your flexor carpi ulnaris and your extensor carpi ulnaris.
Because they're neutralizers to each other to neutralize out the flexion and extension piece and produce pure ulnar deviation. Okay? Questions on that? So another example of neutralizers to cancel out one of their motions to make them do just strictly their other isolated motion. Okay? Wrist muscles, not so